I found out about the Young Eagles program when I was 12 years old and took my first flight on. I fell in love with aviation. I was appointed the very first ambassador for aviation and space education for the Federal Aviation Administration. But you cannot expect a handout. You have to be willing to put in the work to be able to make your dreams become real.
This is the Future in Flight podcast. We're coming in from a hangar somewhere near the flight line, where the A&P always has time for your annual. I'm your host, Shawn Staerker. Today, we're talking with someone who's reshaped what's possible in aviation, not through luck or connections, but through pure determination and a love for flight that started with nothing more than a joystick, a home computer, and a dream. Imagine being 12 years old, flying virtual airliners across digital skies in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now imagine turning that childhood fascination into a real flight, in a real airplane, and from there into a life spent inspiring others to take off. Our guest for today's long-form conversation, Jamail Larkins, did exactly that. He's the founder of Aviation Start and the Dream Launch Tour, two programs dedicated to helping the next generation find their wings. But Jamail's story didn't begin with easy wins or open doors. It began with rejection, 93 of them in fact, before he finally got a single yes. In this conversation, we'll trace his journey from that first Young Eagles flight to performing aerobatics in front of 100,000 people, and now to helping others take their first leap into aviation. We're clear direct right into this conversation. Let's go. We have got an incredible opportunity because Jamail Larkins from aviationstart.org is joining us today. Jamail, welcome into the Future in Flight podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Shawn, thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Let's start kind of where it all started. Do you remember the very first moment you fell in love with aviation?
Absolutely. I guess to start off with, I was a gamer, probably the very first generation of gamers that were out there. I played Microsoft Flight Simulator for hours and hours. Literally, every single day after I got home from school, I would hop on my computer and play Microsoft Flight Simulator and fly my favorite airliner, fly, aerobatic airplane, whatever the case was. I was doing that. That was the majority of my afternoon after I got out of school. And I did that for about 2 years. I found out about the Young Eagles program when I was 12 years old and took my first flight in that. And after flying over my house, my middle school, I fell in love with aviation.
So you're a guy that's from Augusta, Georgia. What's it like? What's the aviation scene there? Give me a little bit about what you saw growing up in aviation there and kind of how that experience was for you.
So it was pretty standard. Where I started flying out of is Daniel Field with EA Chapter 172. They're the ones that gave me my very first flight inside the small airplane, the Cessna 172. In fact, a 1956 Cessna 172. So it was a little bit older, but as were most of the airplanes at Daniel Field. But at the same time, it gave me my chance. It gave me my start inside of the aviation industry. And it was not about flying in the latest and greatest airplane. It was about just getting up in the air for the very first time. Aviation in Augusta it's not a very big industry. There's not a ton of airplanes out there. So it was just really getting the chance to meet some local pilots, people inside of the Augusta area that had an interest in aviation, and they gave me an opportunity to get my start inside of it, and it's kind of blossomed from there.
Really, the Young Eagles is involved in so many of these aviation genesis stories. They are such an incredible program. So share a little bit about how Young Eagles sort of influenced your path that you're on today.
Well, I mean, to get started, it was my entire world. I had no connection to aviation whatsoever. No one in my family flew. I had no family friends that were involved inside of aviation. And it just happened that I was on an aviation chat room after playing Microsoft Flight Simulator for a couple of years. I wrote a message and said, hey, I'm a 12-year-old kid from Augusta, Georgia. I want to become an airline pilot. Does anybody have any advice for me? And a Delta Airlines captain wrote me back and told me about the Young Eagles program. So I contacted them. They got me in touch with Mr. Wyman Fox, who is the local Young Eagles coordinator in my hometown of Augusta. And Mr. Fox took me up for my very first flight in his personal airplane. Like I said, a 1956 Cessna 172. And we went flying over my house, my middle school. And most importantly, he let me put my hands on the controls of an airplane. And that's when I fell in love with it.
And there it is. That's the statement right there. It is getting to manipulate the controls for so many individuals. That is just, I mean, I love Flight Simulator and it's so great. It's such a great tool and great recreation. But there's something about putting your hands on the controls and being in control of that aircraft that so many people fall in love with. Now, where was your favorite place to fly when you would fly Microsoft Flight Simulator?
I flew literally, I was a pretty high hour virtual airline pilot. So I would hop in to my Delta Airlines 777, and I'm not lying to you. I would fly pretty much any route that I could think of throughout, mostly domestic. I didn't do a lot of international flights back when I was 12 years old, but I did a ton of domestic flights originating from Atlanta, going to anywhere that you could possibly imagine inside of the continental.
Are you retired? You still flying a couple of hours, keep current in the flight sim?
I have kind of semi-retired from flight sim. Never made it to the actual airline decks to be honest, but I've been able to fill my time with flying some other airplanes.
Yeah, it kind of seems like something has really just manifested other than the airline thing, and we'll talk a little bit about how your career has progressed, and it is really important because here is a guy who wanted to be an airline captain, as so many people do, but serves aviation in a little bit different way. Your opportunities are a little bit different, and let's talk about going through flight training. So we're kind of transitioning from Microsoft Flight Simulator into actual training. You sought sponsorship for that, is that correct?
Well, it started off with me starting with the Young Eagles program, like I mentioned. I took my first flight with that, and really, Young Eagles is about giving you your introduction to aviation. At the time when I first started flying in the late 90s, they didn't have any follow up programs like they do today. I don't know if you saw recently, EAA announced Young Eagles Connect, which gives people that have taken their very first flight with the Young Eagles program an opportunity to go through private pilot ground school for free, I might add, but then also get connected with mentors that can help guide them, especially through any rough areas that they might be reaching. Stuff like that didn't quite exist when I took my first Young Eagles flight. So with I started volunteering with the local Young Eagles chapter in my hometown. So I would help out with Young Eagle flight registrations whenever we have a Young Eagles flight rally at Daniel Field. I would help parents fill that out. I would help show the kids the pre-flight of what's involved in making sure the airplane's safe before flight that each pilot has to do. Help marshal them to whatever airplane they're going flying in. And that allowed me to stay involved in aviation in some capacity. And by doing that, after a couple of months, I got the chance to know a lot of local pilots. And then, in addition to Mr. Fox, when other local pilots were going up, they would give me a call or give me a chance to go flying with them, gained some flight time through that. And then my parents saw that I was pretty serious about it. And they gave me a small budget that allowed me to fly a couple times a month when I was 12 years old. By the time I was 13, I was able to actually handle the airplane completely by myself. But I had to have a flight instructor with me. Because here inside the United States, if you want to fly a powered airplane, you have to be at least 16 years old. And the idea of paying $75 an hour for the next 3 years was just heartbreaking to me. So I got this bright idea when I was 13 years old. I'm going to petition the federal government and get an exemption to fly solo before my 16th birthday. Something they had never granted before, but I thought I was going to be the first. And I flew with over 6 different flight instructors, 2 designated flight examiners. All of them wrote letters to the FAA saying that I could safely handle an airplane and solo flight, even though I was only 13 years old, and sent this petition off to the FAA. They wrote me back and said, "We need more information." I did not understand at the time. That was a polite brush off. Like, "Hey, kid, you're never going to get this, but we're really impressed with what you're doing." I thought it was, there's a real chance that you might get this. And during this time frame, I was trying to fly with additional flight instructors and DPEs to try to get more references for the FAA could say, "Hey, he actually apparently does have the skills to be able to do this." But during that time frame, I met a Young Eagles pilot that's from Canada, and I was telling him about what I was trying to do. And he told me in Canada, you only have to be 14 to fly solo up there. So I got this another bright idea when I was 13, that maybe if I went up to Canada, got my student pilot's license up there, soloed safely and legally, the FAA would grant my exemption to be able to fly solo once I came back to the United States. But I didn't want to ask my parents for the funds to be able to do this. So I decided I was going to raise the money on my own. I wrote over 100 different aviation companies asking if they would help sponsor my trip to go up to Canada. I literally found any company that I could that was involved in aviation, asked them if they would help support my dream. And literally 93 of them said no before I got my very first jet. I completely understand why, but 93 of them did say no, and I am so glad that I just did not give up. Honestly, I'm not sure why I didn't, because literally every week I was getting letters from different companies I had wrote, and they were saying, "Good luck, but unfortunately, we can't support you." But I kept on going, and after '93, my '94 company said yes. I raised the funds I needed to by like 105. It literally went from all no's to all yeses after I got past that 90 plus mark. And I went up to Canada when I was 14 and became one of the youngest American pilots to fly a powered airplane solo at the age of 14.
Yeah, your sponsorship effort is a lot like my high school dating life. I mean, there was just a ton of rejections before somebody finally took a chance on you. So you dovetail right into the to my question here's a young kid who the FAA has basically told, stand by indefinitely. The people who you've reached out to sponsor your dream have basically told you not at this time. How did you overcome that mentally?
I think, truthfully, I just didn't understand no, and I think that that's something that a lot of people fall victim to is that when you start hearing your first few no's, or if you start not experience the progress that you expect or you want to have, that instant gratification, if you don't get it, a lot of people quit. And that is typically the biggest mistake and failure point that a lot of people have is that they give up too quickly. If you have a dream, you have a goal, it's important to see it through. Do not give up just because you get the first few no's, or you're not getting. Let's relate it to something that a lot of people today can relate to: getting involved in social media, for example. A lot of people think I'm going to post something and I'm going to go viral the very next day. And that's just not reality. The same thing is not reality inside of the cockpit. If you want to learn and become a pilot, you want to get your private pilot's license. On day one, you're not going to be able to fly the airplane and land it perfectly. It's going to take you hundreds of times of repeating the process. You're going to have to study for it. It's just going to take effort and time to be able to be successful in anything that you do. And for whatever reason at a young age, hearing no, having failure was not going to prevent me from going after what I wanted to do. And I was just really fortunate.
Was there ever a time that you thought this is just isn't going to work out?
For sure, through multiple points of my career. Most recently, there's been business ventures that haven't gone as well as what I wanted them to. Learning, I went everything from being a 12-year-old kid in Augusta, Georgia, that wanted to fly airplanes, thinking he was going to become an airline pilot, wanting to go up to Canada and do all these things, getting an exemption to fly solo before my 16th birthday. And none of it was an easy road by any means. So there were plenty of times that I wanted to give up. Fortunately, the love of aviation stopped me from doing that.
Well, good thing you didn't, because we're going to talk about just some incredible things that are on the horizon. You've mentioned going to Canada and soloing at 14. So we have this 14-year-old who has really flown a fair amount in the U.S. Now you go over to Canada. What was that flight like, and what is that process like of flying over in Canada, and how does that differ from the U.S.?
One of the biggest difference, it's actually not as, in some areas it's more lax, in other areas it's more strict. Obviously the age requirement is a little bit more lax, but some of the preparation and paperwork that you have to do to become a student pilot in Canada is different than what it is here inside the United States. And in that regards, I would say it's a little bit more strict. Mr. Richards, the Young Eagles coordinator for a local EA chapter in Tennant, Ontario, Canada, was my point of contact to help set up all of my arrangements with Transport Canada before I ever went up there. So Transport Canada knew, the governing body of aviation, similar to the FAA here, knew that there was going to be this kid from Augusta, Georgia, coming up to Canada during his 14th summer, and he wanted to fly an airplane solo. And they were so kind. For example, once I got my medical and I got signed off, they actually faxed my paperwork back to the local flight school in Timmins for I could immediately start soloing. The biggest thing that I can say is that it was the coolest experience you could ever possibly imagine. Thinking, being a 14-year-old kid that's been working on something for 2 years, everybody's been telling him no. And finally, he gets to this point where all of the legal paperwork's done, all of his training's been completed, and he now gets to take an airplane up in the sky by himself and actually experience what it's like to be a official pilot. It was the coolest experience of my life.
I love it. It still radiates through your voice when you tell this story. And as we're about to talk about it, you've had some pretty amazing career milestones. So I love that it's still there, it's fresh, and it's with you. So let's talk about, by 18, You're performing aerobatics, right? You've moved on from a 14-year-old kid flying straight and level to doing aerobatics, and not just aerobatics, but you opened for the Blue Angels. What is that like? Did you get to soak that in, and what was your reflection on that event?
So going for any pilot, getting a chance to actually go to an air show and you see professional pilots doing tricks, aerobatics inside of the air, close to the ground, in front of an audience. They can be 50 to 100,000 people. It is probably the biggest rock star moment that any pilot could possibly ever experience. And at the age of 13, I got the chance to start going to some major air shows, Sun and Fun, Oshkosh, and a few other just regional shows throughout the Southeast. And I saw these pilots being rock stars. And I was like, I want to be that pilot. And so when I was 16 years old, after I got the chance to actually solo here inside the United States, I decided I was going to start working on that. So instead of working on getting my instrument rating and things along those lines, I immediately started learning how to fly aerobatics. That was a pretty slow process just because it's about $600 on average per hour of aerobatic flight training. And I come from an average middle class family. So 600 an hour was a little bit outside of the price range, but I was able to start up a small pilot distribution company. I was selling headsets, GPSs, pilot supplies through Gulf Coast Avionics. I was selling flight training materials from King Schools and Rod Machada's flight training products online. And that helped give me a little bit of funding for me to be able to start paying for more aerobatic training. And by the time I turned 18, I actually was able to purchase my own airplane. So before I graduated high school, I purchased a high performance aerobatic biplane, a Christian Eagle 2. And literally the summer of my 18th year, instead of going on vacation with my friends, I was flying 4 to 5 times a day, practicing inside of my Eagle. And I took my aerobatic competency evaluation, my ACE certification, literally the week before I went to college. I got certified to fly airshows when I was 18, and I had my very first show about 2 weeks after I started college at Embry-Riddle. It was the coolest thing. I left Embry-Riddle's campus, came up to the Vidalia Onion Festival, and I got the chance to actually fly as the opening act for the Blue Angels when I was 18 years old.
That's incredibly remarkable. So many points there. I mean, you come back from that. Well, hey, Jamel, what'd you do for your weekend? Well, I opened for the Blue Angels. And I know that Vidalia Onion, that's a great festival, by the way. That's love
Yeah, it's a
Vidalia.
huge show. I mean, literally, they have about 100,000 people, so you can imagine being at a pretty big size air show. It's your very first show that you're going to be performing at, and you're the opening act for the entire show with the Blue Angels headlining it. Pretty cool experience, especially when you're 18. And to think that 5 years prior, I was sitting inside of the audience. Watching these performers perform and be these pilot rock stars. And I was like, I'm going to do that. So the biggest thing that I like to tell people is no matter where you start, that is not a indication of where you're going to end up at. Because if you're willing to put in the work, you're willing to ignore the naysayers that might be in the back of your head or your friend group, whatever the case may be, and you focus on your goal, you can make your wildest dreams become your reality.
Well, you mentioned some of the biggest shows in aviation. You mentioned Sun and Fun. You mentioned Oshkosh. I mean, to the air show world, that is the national stage. But let's take it one step further. You actually were putting smiles on faces on a national stage on the David Letterman show on late night television across America. Give me a little bit about what that experience was like and tell us how it was flying out of, quote, Teterboro Airport.
When I was flying air shows, I definitely kind of stood out a little bit just because I was the new guy on the circuit. But in addition to being the new guy on the professional air show circuit, I also happen to be one of the youngest. And so I utilized that to kind of help spread the message that, opportunities inside of aviation exist for anybody, no matter who you are, male, female, no matter what your race is. If you're willing to put the work in, you can make your wildest dreams in aviation become a reality. And when I started actually getting relatively known inside of the industry, the Late Show with David Letterman reached out and asked if I had an interest in performing. And I said, absolutely. If I can spread the love of aviation with everybody on primetime TV, I'm your guy. So it took about a month of preparation. What a lot of people don't realize is there was literally a live satellite feed that was hooked up to the cockpit of the Eagle at Solberg, New Jersey, not technically Peterborough, despite that's what Letterman said. But we were literally flying live while he was filming the show. And it was just an opportunity to show that young people can get involved inside aviation. It's a really cool experience. You can even do things like flying aerobatics close to the ground safely if you get properly trained and you do what's necessary to be a safe and competent pilot.
And here we have David Letterman, arguably one of the most accomplished comedians and hosts in America. And as soon as we start talking aerobatics, he is relating about the moves that he did to you. He's telling you some of the Dutch roll that he did or the hammerhead. Now, do you have a favorite aerobatic maneuver?
My favorite aerobatic maneuver probably is the tail slide. It is one of the more difficult maneuvers to do properly, but it's very similar to a hammerhead. But instead of pivoting the airplane on utilizing your rudder, you basically pull the power all the way back and you try to make the airplane fly backwards as long as possible. If you do it right and you're at the perfect angle, you can make the airplane fly backwards for a little bit. But then it's probably the most extreme roller coaster you could ever possibly imagine, because eventually the airplane's going to pivot either backwards or forwards.
Let's take a quick break from this great conversation to hear from one of our awesome sponsors. Aviation is the leading youth aviation magazine, here to attract, educate, and empower the next generation of aviators. Inside every issue, you'll discover the future of flight through the stories of students, programs, and innovators shaping the skies. And with Aviation's Rising Star program, we're recognizing students with a passion for aviation, celebrating their journey, connecting them with industry sponsors, and fueling their dreams. Got your own aviation story? Aviation would love to hear from you. Check out the website at aviationusa.com. And now we'll rejoin with Jamail talking about his favorite aerobatic maneuver.
Biggest jolt of your life as the airplane swings at literally no airspeed to go the opposite direction. So it's a fun maneuver. It's extremely hard to execute properly, but when you do it right, it is the coolest feeling that you could possibly experience inside of the cockpit.
That sounds absolutely phenomenal. I definitely am going to have to experience that. I haven't, and tell you the truth, I'm mostly a straight and level guy, but to hear you talk about that, I mean, what is it? Oh, you got to throw that aside and go with it. Before we move on to the entrepreneurial spirit, which you kind of touched on, that you really have developed and cultivated over your career, are there any lessons that you took away from the airshow world that still guide you today?
There's definitely, on every phase of aviation that I've been in, I've learned something critically important to life. One of the biggest lessons I've learned is dedication and work ethic from the airshow side. Literally going from, even though I was started flying aerobatics off and on when I was 16 years old, I didn't really get heavy into it until I bought my airplane my senior year of high school and started flying that summer. So putting every other distraction aside, I was able to go to become a basic airshow performer, but still a certified airshow performer in essentially a full summer. It was probably the most intense training period of anything from a physical standpoint that I'd ever done. Literally, I would come home after flying 4 to 5 times a week, or 4 to 5 times a day, excuse me, and you would be exhausted. You could barely get into bed. I mean, I'm going to sleep when literally the sun is setting, and I'm waking up when the sun is rising. I have bruises all over my body. You're pulling positive 7Gs, you're pushing -5, 4 to 5 times a day the entire summer. So you can imagine by the end of the summer, you're just drained, your body's beat up, but it's also one of the coolest feelings. It's kind of like any other sports endeavor that you ever get involved in. There's some work, there's some sacrifice, and there's that feeling of accomplishment when you actually win. And being able to win in that point of being able to get certified as an airshow performer when I was 18 years old definitely gave me that enthusiasm. And that positive experience. But work ethic and training hard was definitely some of the biggest lessons I learned from flying air.
There's a reason they refer to it as the grind. It is not easy flying a lot of shows, flying a full schedule. I mean, even a part-time schedule is exhausting. So let's move into entrepreneurship in the aviation industry. And you mentioned starting at a young age, 15, 16. At 21, you launched another company. Were there any hurdles to being taken seriously at such a young age?
As you can imagine, going into a bank when you're 20, 21 years old and asking them for a 7-figure loan to purchase a fleet of airplanes, you don't get viewed or looked upon favorably by most bankers. Fortunately, once again, it was a situation of going to multiple banks. I can't tell you how many banks, despite having a relatively successful company when I was 21 years old and I wanted to do my first aircraft leasing transaction business where we would buy airplanes and then lease them to flight schools. How many banks laughed me out of their office literally because I was a 21-year-old kid saying, "Hey, I'm going to personally guarantee a new business that's going to buy airplanes and then we're going to lease them to flight schools." And how many of them just laughed me out of their office. Fortunately, I did not give up again after getting denied and denied and denied. I decided I still was going to do it. So I started researching alternatives. I ended up going and doing asset based financing for my first fleet deal. After making that successful, I was able to start getting more credit based lease deals. And then we ended up leasing a 7-figure portfolio to flight schools throughout the country, including some major universities. And that is still my primary means of income of what I do today is just by buying, selling, and leasing aircraft. And that all started when I was a college student at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical.
So, give a piece of advice to somebody out there who may be in a very similar situation. They're 20, 21, they've had some success, but now they're going to go in and really try to make a big business. They're going to try to make that leap. They've been fastidious, they've done their homework. This is somebody who doesn't quit, but they're just up against that wall. Give them a little bit of advice.
There's a lot of lessons that I can share with people that want to start up their own company or get involved in business. The first thing that I would say is, especially inside of the aviation side, do not limit your opportunities. When I first started flying, I thought I was going to become an airline pilot. And I mean, I had literally met with the chief pilots of American Airlines, the vice president of flight operations, before I even graduated high school. And I thought that that was the track that I was going to go on. By going to Oshkosh and Sun and Fun and some of these other aviation events, I started to see all of the opportunities that were available inside of the industry. And I realized that there was more opportunities out there than just flying for a living. I could actually be involved in aircraft sales and still get to fly some pretty cool airplanes, but be able to do things on my own. And so I ultimately ended up shifting my focus from just being a commercial pilot to getting more involved inside the business aspect of the aviation industry, which has led me to working with the FAA, working with the National Business Aviation Association, testifying in front of Congress. So many different career options or unique experiences that I've had inside of the industry that would not have been there if I would have just had a complete tunnel vision on what I wanted to do. So, tunnel vision is extremely important when you know that you're going to do something. Like when I wanted to fly air shows, getting complete tunnel vision on making that goal become a reality was critically important if I was going to be successful at it. But you also have to have your ears open, your eyes open to other opportunities that you might be a better fit that you may not even realize are realistic opportunities for you when you're starting up a business. I never really thought that I was going to be in aircraft sales and leasing until I had the opportunity to meet somebody that was involved in it. He kind of took me under his wing and gave me my first experience to what that business, that sector of the aviation business was like. And I realized that this was something that I was good at, something I was interested in, and something that could actually pay the bills. So I decided to explore that. But the biggest thing that I can tell people is definitely keep your eyes and ears open to opportunities that may not necessarily be prevalent to you off the rip. But in addition to that, you have to figure out how you're going to be able to create a solution to something that is needed. So if there is a problem, for example, a lot of flight schools would like to have access to airplanes, but a lot of flight schools can't afford to purchase additional aircraft, whether they're new or used. So if you can create a model that can then give them the resources that they need to be able to grow their business and you can be able to make it in a profitable venture, you have a successful idea there. So it's not always just about what sounds cool or what is interesting. Sometimes you have to figure out what the problem is and how you can solve it or put your own twist to solving that problem. And that's the key to having a successful business, in my opinion.
Golly, nobody can say it more eloquently than yourself. It is just that is it right there. You just said it, and you led right into to what we're going to talk about. I think you just gave somebody a start in aviation. It's almost like you gave them an aviation start. Let's talk about that initiative.
Aviation Start is something that came up because I have been fortunate enough. I was appointed the very first ambassador for aviation and space education for the Federal Aviation Administration while I was in college. And in that capacity, I've literally traveled across the country. I've gone into high schools, colleges, airshows, all sorts of different aviation events across the country, really trying to be a recruiter for the aviation workforce, trying to show people, the next generation, that there's a lot of opportunities out there. And it's become even more critical today because if you start to look at the workforce numbers, there's a huge issue that most people don't realize. We have 83% of all the mechanics that are working on airplanes today scheduled to retire within the next 10 years. We have about 50% of all the commercial pilots working inside of aviation that are scheduled to retire within that same time period. The Federal Aviation Administration is looking to hire about 54% of its workforce within the next 5 years. Pretty much all of the major aviation career fields inside of the aviation industry is going to have a mass exodus of people that are about to retire. So we need to get the next generation to consider having a career inside of the aviation industry if we want our Amazon packages to arrive every single day, if we want to be able to travel for business and conduct a face-to-face business meeting, if we want to be able to go on vacation with our family and friends. There's so many aspects of aviation that's critical to every person's actual life on a daily basis that we kind of forget about, that we're going to have a major supply chain issue if we don't recruit more people to get involved in it. So we started this concept called the Dream Launch Store, where we're basically trying to inspire people to think about all the career opportunities that are available inside the aviation industry, whether it's becoming a pilot, a mechanic, an air traffic controller, getting involved in airport operations, or whatever the case may be, because all of these career fields are desperately needed. And we started that program about 10 years ago. Or about 15 years ago, excuse me. And it's been extremely successful. But the number one question that we always receive while we're on tour is, how can I pay for it? I come from an average middle class family like myself, and my parents don't have $100,000 for me to become a commercial pilot. So how can I make that happen? I knew there was a lot of resources. There's a lot of resources out there, Shawn, but a lot of other people that might be listening to this don't realize that there's over $20 million worth of scholarships that are given out every single year to people, whether you're 16 years old and you're in high school and you want to get a completely free private pilot's license, you can do that through the Commemorative Air Force. Whether you're a mechanic and you want to go work at Tempest Aero, that manufactures a wide range of different components that go on engines. Whether you want to work on airport operations and work at one of the large FBO companies like Signature Aviation that provides people the opportunity to land their airplanes and fuel them. There's so many support aspects of the aviation industry that we need to fill, that it's really important that we can get more people involved inside of the industry. So I've been tasked with this mission of creating this resource that connects people with career opportunities inside of the aviation industry, and not just tell them, hey, you can become a pilot, but also show them the roadmap. So everything from, hey, I need to be able to get a headset. Where could I buy my Bose 30? What flight school should I go to? What flight training scholarships are available for me? To, do I need to go to a college to be able to become a successful commercial pilot? Answering all of these questions and help people build a roadmap to whatever sector of the aviation industry that they want to go into, help them build that, and then connect them with all of the scholarship opportunities and resources that are available, so nobody has an excuse that if they have an interest inside of the aviation industry, we try to help facilitate that and be able to help make that dream become a reality for them.
What a powerful addition to the industry. It's not enough to say that there are positions and there are jobs, but actively connecting people with them and the means to pay for the education to get those jobs is just absolutely monumental to some individuals. And if they've heard this, if they've heard about these $20 million in scholarships and they're ready to check aviationstart.org out, where would they go?
It's pretty simple. It's completely free, number one. You just go to aviationstart.org. You register for access to the scholarship database. And in addition, once you get registered and actually create your account on it, you not only get access to the largest, most comprehensive scholarship database available for aviation scholarships and flight training scholarships to become a pilot or a mechanic or an air traffic controller or even a flight attendant, but you get also access to flight schools. You get access to a ton of different additional resources to help connect you and put you on that path from sitting inside of a desk one day while you're in high school or in college to actually walking into your very first day on the job at whatever career field that you're interested in going into. So I'm really excited and I'm hopeful and optimistic that the resources that we're putting into one place, that some great organizations like AOPA and EAA and the FAA and others have created, being put into one place makes it easier for people to realize that these opportunities exist and what programs that they can take advantage of to be able to get their career started and hopefully keep the U.S. economy going strong and allowing our everyday way of life to continue to succeed and be seamless to the point that most people don't even think that the aviation industry is really necessary.
No big deal, right? Just a little something.
No big deal. We got a big mission and we're starting it, but I really appreciate the support and help from people like you, Avi Nation, etc. That are really helping us try to connect people with all these resources that are out there to get more people involved.
It's a phenomenal mission, and what you've done so far is astonishing, and I think, as they say, the best is yet to come. When you look back on your journey, is there something that you're most proud of that stands out to you?
I would say so far, my work with working with the FAA as their ambassador for aviation education has been the most rewarding aspect of my life so far. Flying air shows is phenomenal. Being that pilot rock star is cool. And don't completely count me out on that in the future because that's definitely something that's still near and dear to my heart. But being able to help people discover aviation and then find a pathway to be able to have a career inside of this industry has been a really cool experience. And getting feedback because we're now been doing this long enough that there have been people that were in schools that have heard the Dream Launch presentation that now actually have a career inside of the aviation industry has been a really cool experience to have. And now with Aviation Start just being launched this year, I hope in the next couple years we'll be able to hear from people that literally found an aviation scholarship through Aviation Start and was able to get inside the cockpit and become a pilot or start working on airplanes or whatever the case may be and start making their dreams become a reality. And knowing that we're helping them make that happen is probably the biggest legacy that I hope that I can help leave the aviation industry as being a connector and someone that helps solve the problem.
Doing a fantastic job. The early reports, I'd say, are very positive. You mentioned dreams. We've heard a lot of dreams, and aviation is the place for dreamers. Give me one of your dreams. What is something in the aviation industry that you haven't done that you would like to?
Well, it is one of the dreams that I have not had the chance to do just yet. Stay tuned.
I like it.
It's the biggest way that I can answer that right now. I think that there will be an announcement coming out here within the very near future of one really cool dream that I've been working on for a while.
I should have known. Not only are we going to talk about the dream, maybe in nebulous terms, but we're talking about a dream that is underway. Things are already in motion, and now we're talking about an announcement. That's just how you do things, right? You don't come with a dream, a suggestion. You come with a plan.
Yes, absolutely. So most dreams, to turn them from being a fantasy and a dream into your actual reality, it takes a little bit of work to be able to do that. And that takes preparation. It takes thinking out. It takes developing relationships. And there's been one really cool dream that I've been working on for a while. And I think we're going to make it a reality here in the very near.
Now we're talking breaking news here. Well, I can't wait. We're going to have a dramatic pause. This is going to be great for ratings, everybody. So let's talk these my three favorite questions. You ready for some fun stuff?
Yes, sir. Let's shoot.
Man. All right. You have talked a lot about doing just a number of things. You've reached your dreams. You've talked about flying. Let's hone in right on that flying. You've done a lot of flying. You've got to have gotten hungry up there. What's your favorite in-flight snack?
My favorite airplane snack is going to be Sour Patch Kids. I'm definitely a sweet and sour guy.
Let's go. That's a unique, original answer. I've been doing this 7 years. I've never gotten that answer.
Sour Patch Kids is definitely going to be my number one.
Yeah, I'm bringing them, and I'm flying with you. We've got this. Now, if you could fly anything, any aircraft, what would you fly?
Any airplane. So I've been fortunate. I've been in everything from ultralights to, an F-18 going supersonic a couple hundred feet off the coast of Florida. So I've had some pretty cool experiences. But if this will never happen realistically, but if I could fly any airplane out there, I probably have to say a SR-71 in terms of my dream machines, but in terms of more realistic opportunities, the Beach Starship has been one of the coolest airplanes I've ever seen, and I have a poster of it hanging up in my childhood bedroom. So if I could fly any airplane that's still within the realm of possibility, a Beach Starship.
Tell me about your dream co-pilot. If you could fly with anybody throughout time, who would that be?
Anybody throughout time that I could fly with. Wow, that's a pretty loaded question because there's a couple different people for a variety of reasons. I would say one of the people that I would have to give credit to and say that if I could go flying with any of them would probably be a member of the Tuskegee Airmen. That would be a pretty cool experience to just be able to go flying with them because if it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't have the opportunity to be a pilot today. More in current history today or realistic times today, I guess I would say. Flying aerobatics is, as I mentioned, one of my biggest passions on earth. And there's a couple people recently, as you know, we talked about it. I got a chance to go flying with Mike Goulian recently, which was a dream come true. Getting a chance to go flying with like a Patty Wagstaff would also be a really cool experience.
My thanks to Jamail Larkins for joining me today and for reminding us that perseverance, passion, and a little bit of stubbornness can turn even the wildest dreams into viable flight plans. If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe to the Future in Flight podcast. And while you're there, leave us a quick review. It really helps other listeners discover the show and join this growing aviation community we're building. And if you're ready to take your own first step toward the skies, check out the free tools and resources available at aviationstart.org. It's the perfect place to begin your aviation journey. Until next time, I'm Shawn Staerker. We'll see you out there and up there.